We're good to go.
Okay, cool. Well, Joe, I appreciate you making the time for a little Linchpin member interview, man.
Hey, no problem. Happy to be here. Been a fan for a long time.
Well, that's we're gonna share your story with everybody, which I think is gonna be really cool based upon some of the info that you emailed me. But I'm in Washington State. Where are you?
I'm also in Washington State, born and raised down in the Tacoma
Really?
area. Yep. And
Scenic
I now
Tacoma.
live over by Chambers Bay. It's kind of a almost famous golf course. The 2015 US Open was here, but I live a stone's throw from there. So, yeah,
Okay. It's been cold.
it has been cold. Yeah, colder than usual this time of year, but I'm also like a snowboarder, so I'm not upset by the early open with all the mountains and everything.
So you were here a few years ago when we had that Snowmageddon thing.
Snowmageddon. I tell people like I work with some coaches on the daily who are kind of from all over, and a lot of them are from the Midwest, and they pine for snow. And it's like, man, you have no idea. A couple years ago, we had Snowmageddon. And
Uh-huh.
I know you kind of like to poo-poo the Northwest weather in the winter every now and then, but I tried to stress this is very not normal. We usually get like a day or two of snow, and when I was
For sure.
growing up, there was even a hint of snow in the forecast. Cancel school, cancel everything, everyone's staying in. And then I feel like since Snowmageddon, where we were so unprepared structurally and with not having enough plows and enough road care, it's
We got
kind of gone
wrecked.
the way now where I see a lot of salt on roads early now and stuff like that where we didn't used to have to worry about the undercarriage rusting out of my car. Now I'm not so sure. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
Yeah, man, we got
but
slammed. We were just snowed in, and we don't live on like a popular road, and they still plow them, they don't have that many plows, so
yeah.
the main roads are going to get plowed, and the side streets are going to be just a frozen tundra. We were snowed in for quite some time. I don't know how many times I shoveled my driveway, and the snow just kept coming, and it kept coming, and it kept coming, and I was like,
So I
oh,
gotta ask, what was worse for you guys, Snowmageddon or the bomb cyclone? Because
you
we
know,
didn't get any bomb cyclone at all, dude. It was
oh,
barely
really?
a breeze outside.
You know,
Borderline disappointing until I heard about the carnage.
the Snowmageddon was fun because the kids loved it. I mean, they were, there was literally, I took a picture of like a tape measure I put in the snow. I think we had like 30 inches or something of snow. Like it was ridiculous. And so the kids were just in absolute heaven. We live in kind of some area where like the Cascade Mountains, we're just in the right place where we get pretty bad wind regularly. Like the winter, it's not uncommon for us to lose our power several times during the winter because of the wind. So when that bomb cyclone hit, in addition to where we are at the Cascades, we got we got destroyed. So, we're lucky to have a generator. So we went through tons and tons and tons of propane, which I did wish we didn't run in the generator, but we didn't have Wi-Fi forever, which everything these days is Wi-Fi. But I can't complain for the bomb cyclone because since we had a generator, like the house had heat and the food in the fridge was okay. And there was a lot of people that their houses got cold, because so I
Absolutely.
can't complain. So um I didn't mind the bomb cyclone. My wife couldn't stand that we didn't have Wi-Fi. It kind of didn't bother me at all. It bothered her greatly. So I think we were on opposite ends of the spectrum there. But if you're a snowboarder, man, Crystal Mountain's a beautiful mountain. We've got some other, nice mountains around it, but the prices have got crazy to go skiing.
You're absolutely right. No, I get a day or two a year with the little kids, and
I was
so
gonna
I
say,
take
if you
advantage
take
of
if you
them.
take a couple kids to Crystal and you got a
No,
park
no,
and
no. With
like,
okay, let me reframe. With the kids, I get a couple days a year now that I have kids. Um, so I will usually take like a day off during the week after a
okay,
big snow. And then I do have friends who buy the season's passes and they can hook me up with a little discount so it's not as bad, but you're absolutely right. It is unsustainable for a almost unsustainable for a middle class
right.
family to go up to the mountain these days, and
I
it's
mean, how
tough.
much do you think it
But
is for four people to go skiing for the day?
for my wife and myself, it would be at least 250 off the bat just
Right,
for us. And I don't have equipment for my children, so I would have to rent equipment
right.
and all of that on top of whatever the lift ticket would. So yeah, easy. One day is like 600 bones, man.
Which
Off.
is crazy to go
And
skiing every
then
day with your
you're with
family.
kids who don't want to go more than half the day. So now what happens when they're cold and upset and tired and the snot's running down their face and they're like, I want to go home, Dad. And you're like, I
You're
don't
like,
know,
oh, I
man.
paid so much to be here. Why don't we go to the lodge and get you an $11 hot chocolate?
Oh yeah, right. And a $27 piece of pizza. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh man, that's hysterical. Well, when you've been when you sent me your, email a little bit of the backstory on you, and I looked up like your start date. Man, you started Linchpin January of 2019. It's like 5.5 years ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would say I program hopper have been mostly linchpin, but in and out. But my wife has been every day, no questions asked since 2009. Like, and
Wow,
she's crazy.
that's some sustained stuff. You've got a lot of interesting stuff in your story that I'd love to have you just chat about. So you said you've been coaching CrossFit for 8 years, and then you work as a strength and conditioning coach with the U.S. Army for about 3 years. Those two things in themselves are interesting. What's been your CrossFit coaching experience? Your Army coaching experience, and do those interlap and overplay, or are they quite different?
They can be quite different. They can overlap a bunch, and it really depends on the individual I'm working with and what their goals are and what they like to do. So I would say CrossFit's been great. Like I got out of the Marines in 2017 to make a career in fitness and CrossFit, and so I kind of started coaching in a brand new gym right away, and it was baptism by fire very much because while I had some coaching experience in terms of like marksmanship and basic infantry tasks as an instructor in the Marines. I had never really coached fitness or anything. And the owners of the gym that I started coaching at, like I said, they had just opened probably a month before and were pretty new coaches themselves. So they were looking for some help. And in 2015, when I was still in the Marines, I was just kind of diving into all things CrossFit. I was obsessed. I was watching all the old games videos. And so I went with a buddy and got my level one at a CrossFit gym in San Diego, where I had a pretty all-star staff. I had EC and Ray Ragno, and then I can't remember his last name, but Michael, he was a coach at the games for a long time. And
Okay.
so I had a level one, an active level one. And so they kind of were like, do you want to coach some early classes for us? And not really knowing any better, I said, yeah. So I started coaching pretty much for them a lot. And we were using a paid program that very similar, in my opinion, to Linchpin. And I was a big believer in it. And so, yeah, it was fun to kind of build a community over there and be a part of that. And I left there around 2019, went to the gym I'm at now, and I've been there for over 5 years, just rolled 5 years, and have been with them through the shutdowns and everything.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's been great. Like I've grown big time. Taken a lot of the weekend courses that CrossFit offers. I'm a level three now.
Oh,
Just finished that
congratulations.
back in January, so that was a ton of fun. And yeah, along the way, like I said, I got out of the Marine Corps and I got into a degree program, a kinesiology degree program, and started working towards a bachelor's. And then when I was finishing my bachelor's was during that first shutdown, or yeah, that first spring shutdown, and without a lot of like great job opportunities, there was an opportunity to hop into a master's. So I kind of hopped into a master's program at the same local school. It's a small liberal arts college called Pacific Lutheran University. And I got a master's in applied sports psychology, which was kind of cool to see a different side of the kinesiology world. And right when I finished that, I had all hope to get back to working with the military. So a program called the Holistic Health and Fitness Program was just starting to kind of get the ball rolling. They had a pilot program with some bigger Army brigades throughout the country, and they were just starting their rollout of hiring dozens of strength coaches, dozens of athletic trainers, physical therapists. Um, we've got cognitive enhancement specialists, a mental skills trainer. We've got occupational therapists, all part of our team now that we're embedded with brigades throughout. So it's been a good transition in that with the population of soldier I work with is a very low training age. So being able just to teach foundational movements day in and day out and progress and regress and make modifications, that's come very second nature to me, I would say, where a lot of coaches we've had come from like collegiate backgrounds
Hmm.
and are used to working with higher level athletes, and they can have a little trouble when it comes to just like teaching the bare bones or dealing with someone who's never done anything before and don't want
Sure.
to do it, So, yeah,
They're
and
not there
having the
voluntarily.
military, absolutely. And I would say that's the biggest difference that like my biggest struggle with working with the Army is a lot of them don't like it. They don't want to
Hmm.
be there and they're not going to put forth the effort. Where if you're walking into a CrossFit gym, it costs almost $200 a month to work
Right.
out at my gym. Like
You
you've got
chose to
some
be in that
level of
fitness program.
motivation. Absolutely. You've got goals. Like, so they're very receptive to feedback and want to get better. Whereas there are some major eye rolls when I'm just like, hey man, let's open those hips up, or just giving a body part direction, that's it. And they're just like,
Well,
so
and
that
they
can
need
be
to
tough
hear it. They need to
sometimes.
hear it from a former Marine.
Hey, and that definitely gets some equity with some people, and with others, it gets even louder eye rolls. So,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that's been, I was an infantry marine. I was an instructor for a long time, where my job was to be loud and decisive, and I've definitely had to make that switch, both in the CrossFit space and
I was going to
in
ask you about that.
the army space of I'm a bro, I'm a cool guy, I'm someone you can come to, talk to me about your problems. And it's even more important, especially because I work with aviation. So I have high level soldiers that fly helicopters and do cool things, but they're very, very careful about who they talk to, about what sorts of aches and pains they have in fear of getting grounded. So, like, I've been just doing a simple, like, history assessment, making some notes, and the dude's like, what are you writing? You know what I mean? Who's gonna
Right.
see what you're
Right.
writing? And it's like, I'm here for you, you know what I mean? So it is cool where I will push a group of soldiers in the morning, and so another, like I've been able to do my own programming and like weave some um what I call high heart rate stuff in there, not to steal it directly from you, but
You're good,
my
brother. Do your
program
thing.
is kind of a 3-day program in the gym where day A and B are a kind of like a A block, B block. We've got like a hinge and a upper and then a squat and a lower or something like that, right? And we try to vary it with each cycle, but then I always finish with kind of a high heart rate like Tabata style finisher, right? I've
That's
noticed
cool.
that I get a lot better effort when I'm putting people on clocks, and I've got the auditory feedback with the speaker and the beep, and you know when to work, you know when to rest,
Mm.
as opposed to being like, hey, here's a 12-minute block. We're going to do Cindy. Well, I won't call it Cindy, but we're going to do this as many rounds, right? I won't get
Right.
the effort. A lot more standing around. So I tend to put a lot more clock action going on, and I vary the interval, so that
Cool.
um, it's different. And then I'll have my C day is a whole high heart rate day. So that's where it's could be like a circuit style, but again, I vary the time intervals, but we might be somewhere for 30 seconds up to 3 minutes. And it's usually like AMRAP style in there. But then
Okay.
yeah, we're moving around and getting different just movement patterns. A lot of it programming wise is checking boxes, like making sure we get our vertical push, our vertical pull, our horizontal push, our horizontal pull, our squat, our hinge. Because again, You talk to I can't remember the Irish gentleman's name from one of the
Oh,
last,
yes. Yes. Yep.
but he was talking about how people just don't get their heart rates up enough, and how you can do a program for 2 weeks and then all of a sudden missions come in, training comes in, you're gone for 3 weeks. So I feel like
Mm.
this helps me cross all my T's and dot all my I's, and really just as long as we can hit foundational movement patterns and making sure people are balanced, um, that's a big part of what we do. And
Oh, sure.
a lot of it's like two pulls to one push a lot of the time, because we see a lot of this in our
Yeah.
population. And so just kind of knowing how to
I was
address
going to say,
the
I
need.
bet they don't even know how good they have it, quite frankly. And that's not a knock on them, but just I think of how far regular PT has come. I mean, my goodness, I've been out of the military 20 years now. Like it's been a long time. But back then, I mean, all it was let's do some bench and go for a long run. I mean, that was and some sit-ups.
Push-ups and pull-ups. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
that was the training. You know what I mean? Like actual we were squatting and deadlifting and like intervals. I mean, so the mere fact that you're exposing people to that style of strength and conditioning, whether they realize it or not, is so profoundly beneficial. And you won't get everybody, but you're gonna get some converts in there for life. Like you're gonna change some of these people's the trajectory of
Absolutely.
their fitness life. I don't know what percentage, but forever. And that's pretty darn cool, man.
It is. It's a lot of fun because we do get those individuals who come in and the light bulbs go and, hey man, I've sent some dudes off to flight school and worked them up and got them ready, and they ask, what do I do now? And I
Oh,
pull out the
awesome.
BTWB app, and I'm like, this is what you do. Sign up for Linchpin, follow this best you can, and you will be okay.
That's
So,
pretty cool, man.
hey,
That's super cool. I
it's
mean, just
awesome.
to pay it forward like that, you know, and one of the things that was interesting, and I like, you know, you mentioned that one of the gyms you were at, you know, followed some paid program, and you know, I appreciate the fact that you didn't mention the names. I don't mention any names in here and whatnot. You know, there's no need. But one of the interesting things you said when you were giving me some of your backstory was, you know, being a strength coach, both, you know, trying to get yourself in shape, you know, your wife as well follows Linchpin. You've worked at a couple different gyms. You're in the military side of the house that you've tested a whole bunch of different stuff from 531 to named programs, for example, over the years. And you said you always kind of find your way coming back to Linchpin, you know, and you mentioned before we clicked on like as a program hopper as well. I'm always just fascinated by people's stories. You know, it's a big fitness world out there. There's something for everybody. Somebody just wants to lift. There's just that. You just love kettlebells. There's something for that. You just love to run. There's something for that. Like, so it never bothers me where anyone goes because there's just 8 billion people in the world. Like, there's plenty for everybody. But what was it about all these different little journeys and explorations that you did that for you anyway, personally, you know, keep bringing you back to the Lynchman community?
Absolutely. So I would say before I started with the Army job, I was primarily CrossFit. That's what I knew. That's what I did. And starting with some of these other collegiate coaches and people who come from different walks of the strength and conditioning world, it was kind of eye-opening to realize there's a whole world out there I have no idea about. So a lot of what I was doing early on, R&D, baby. What does
That's
this feel
smart.
like?
Yeah,
If I'm writing this for someone, how is it going to feel on their, third set of three on a 5-3-1 when they've got to dig deep and
100%.
grind out these reps? You know what I mean? So
100%.
a lot of it was that. And I've trained since like ninth grade. I started training with my uncle was a power lifter. So I had done some other stuff early on, and it was kind of cool to see how, like, remembering back then what I was doing. I mean, we were using bands and chains, and I had no concept of the training plan. But now being able to be like, oh, we were doing like a West Side conjugate, max effort, dynamic effort kind of, structure.
Hmm.
Then doing the CrossFit level 3 and going back through all the journal articles, there are articles that are like, hey, here is this powerlifting methodology called West Side Conjugate. Here's how you can weave it with a CrossFit program, maybe. So it was cool to start connecting all the dots and doing all the things. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a CrossFitter. My heart is with CrossFit. And before I started doing Linchpin, and before I had like started coaching at the gym and started following that program before Linchpin, I was like Mr. Cherry Picker. I cherry picked everything, many of your workouts off of Instagram, and I would cherry pick everything that didn't have overhead squat or squat snatch
Gotcha.
or things like
Nice.
that. Because I also come from a world of terrible shoulder
Oh,
mobility. Please excuse the garbage truck rolling by.
oh,
But
you're good, man.
so I was kind of in a position where I sorry, I lost my train of thought with the garbage truck.
Cherry picking, program
Yeah, I was
hopping.
cherry picking and kind of got to a point where there was an open workout and I did really good during the first two open work. I think it was like 2017, and it was the ladder with the pull-ups and the squat snatches and heavier squat
Okay.
snatches, harder pull-ups, and I just couldn't do it, dude. Like it was the most embarrassing thing ever. So I really like dug in and was like, all right, let me improve this shoulder mobility quickly, or soon after that started coaching. Um, really dug into it because I don't know, I wanted to be able to perform the movements, but I was a
Hmm.
dude who could do like a 230 Fran, but couldn't overhead squat 95 pounds. So there was
Right. Okay.
like
Yep.
a huge discrepancy there. Um, and so, yeah, starting out cherry picking, and then I honestly was like, man, he's doing this private track thing. I can't believe Pat's a sellout, blah, blah, blah. And then when I finally was like, I was at the gym and I had become much fitter just following a program at an affiliate, which right there, light bulbs like, all right, following a program is the way rather than beating my head against the wall and wherever I'm at, coming up with whatever I want to do. So then once I just had some philosophical differences with how the program was being manipulated. We had this great programming, and then it was like, oh, this isn't sexy enough. So we're going to put in X amount of more volume. And now, not only
Right.
as a coach, do I not believe in it, but now my schedule is all messed up. I'm having trouble just like group management, like keeping everything in order. So I ended up starting Linchpin then, and um, yeah, that's just been the way. And I would say in between there, life has happened. Um, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Addison's disease. Kennedy had it, where my body just decided it doesn't like my adrenal cortexes anymore, which
I was going
secrete
to say,
cortisol
can you
and
explain that?
aldosterone.
I'm unfamiliar with that one.
Okay, so it's an autoimmune disease where so your adrenal cortex sits on top of your kidney. It's like a little hat for your kidney, and it secretes your cortisol, so your stress hormone. So anytime you go to work out or anything like that, your body will squirt cortisol, and that's a lot of the time like a signaling process for breaking down fat into usable energy and stuff like that, right? Like imagine you're running from the bear, your fight or flight response. It's going to try to help provide you the energy in order to escape and survive, right?
Okay.
And then aldosterone is another very important hormone that regulates your salt and your blood pressure. So we're talking
Huh.
about hydration and just like, being able to stand up without getting dizzy. So
Oh,
around the time I left my first gym, I had started having some serious like blood pressure issues
can
where
I ask
I
you a
would
stupid
stand
question?
up.
My
Say
my
again?
stupid question is being unfamiliar with this. Is this the sort of thing that can just develop later in life, or do you think this is something you've had for a long time and you just recently discovered?
No, it's common to happen in your 30s later
Oh,
on.
interesting.
And
Okay.
it's a slow process, though, to where it'll start and you're not super aware of it until like because your cortexes still keep secreting cortisol while they're basically dissolving. And so
Hmm.
until you're at that last bit is when you start feeling some serious physical effects. So it was like September. I was having blood pressure issues, went to the Rite Aid, sat down in the blood pressure machine because I knew something ain't right and took it like three
Mhm.
times. And my blood pressure was like 60 over 49 or something, just
Oh,
stupid low. Every time I stood up, I would just feel like I'm going to faint. So, as a veteran covered by VA insurance, drove right over, got seen, and they sent me to the ER. the ER, they hook me up with an IV and pretty much send me on my way. And I'm like, I need to talk
Mm.
to a doctor. Doctor comes in and I'm like, hey, doc, I get it. I don't know what you guys are thinking, but like something's not right. I've
Yeah,
been dehydrated. I've operated while dehydrated. I've done hard things, and this ain't that. You know what
this
I'm
ain't
saying?
that.
So, and he basically was like, look, at the ER, we look for signs. If you check all those boxes, we send you on your way,
Mm.
and
Mm.
you don't check any of those boxes. So fast forward to May, June, first shutdown. We're in the middle of the first shutdown. I'm finishing up an undergrad, so I'm very kind of stressed. I've got two kids at home.
I was gonna say
Wife's
you're
working
doing
from
this
home
with
now.
kids too, man. Like you're working,
Absolutely.
doing your undergrad with kids. Like you got so much
Absolutely.
on your plate.
My gym is shut down, so I have a list of like 40 members that I'm keeping up with, and we're making videos, demo videos, and like what started with like uh, a no equipment and a limited equipment option, like ballooned into like I'm demoing like 30 movements every other day. Like
I
I don't even know
understand.
what's happening.
I
So
understand.
so it got to the point where I was like physically sick. Like, and your
Oh,
cortisol circadian rhythm is highest in the morning and then tails off towards the evening. So I was sickest in the morning and then would get better throughout the day. But it was to the point, Pat, where like a year before, I was, like I said, no BS, 230 frame, like boom. And to the point where I was trying to back squat 95 pounds, I would get 3 reps, rack it, and be like trying to catch my breath. And then one day I
wow.
passed out doing a demo video, and my wife was like, you're going to the hospital tomorrow morning. And I did. And my salt this time, my sodium level was like just above where they expect people to start seizing and like send you to the
Really?
uh, like the intensive care unit. And so they admitted me. I was there for 6 days while they did test after test, could not figure out what was wrong with me. And then finally, dude, I don't know if they just like Googled some symptoms or whatever. They came in, were like, we're going to do
ChatGPT.
one last test. And they did it and they diagnosed me. And so now I take hydrocortisone, which is a replacement cortisol, and then fludrocortisone, which is a replacement aldosterone. And I tell you what, after like months of feeling sick, the next day they release me. I go home, I take my first in the morning, and I am like bouncing off the walls. Like I'm back, baby. Like let's go.
Just like
And
that.
yep, it was crazy. It was crazy, dude. And I really like I had he was more of a sports med doc at the gym I was coaching at the time, but he was a doctor at the VA, so he really like helped me through it big time, and he did a bunch of research for me and kind of just gave me some advice on the side. So as I eased back into training, I was confident I was doing the right things. So I went through and got diagnosed and then jumped into a master's program, which was during the shutdown, but it was an in-person 13-month like intensive course. So I was like be up here all the time, stressed with like 50 scholarly articles to read, got to do it, blah, 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 all this stuff, like very, very high tax and what they expected. And um, so that was very stressful to where I was like kind of skipping workouts,
Mm-hmm.
uh, skipping meals and
I
not
mean,
really
I'm not
taking the best
shocked, man. I
care.
don't know how you're fitting it all in your day.
It was crazy, dude. It was crazy. And then in this fall, it was just I was had a horrible attitude, horrible mood, and I the second shutdown happened. And it was almost like a blessing because my gym was now closed and I could like I just committed to myself. I was like, I have to work out, I have to hit my meals. So I just woke up and started going to the gym. And instead of having morning classes, I was able to train for myself. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
it devote a lot more time to myself in spaces that a lot of people didn't have access to. So I was very lucky that I could go to my gym, do my thing, and then go home because our gym was closed. So that was where I was back on Linchpin. I was seeing huge progress. Things were just going great. And yeah, and then I finished my program and started working on the base soon after, and things were awesome. And then around January 22, oh, July 22, no, I broke my ankle. And
Oh,
that was like, boom. When I was growing up, I was a competitive wakeboarder. My parents lived on a lake. And so in my older age, I like to go out there and do some cool stuff. Still, like in my mind, low risk. Well, broke my
uh-huh.
ankle, cast for 3 months. And that definitely, like at first, I was really trying to maintain and modify and stick with it. And then I felt like I was just doing too much. My ankle was hurting all the time and kind of went the
Mm,
opposite way and was like doing way too little, you know? So got that off, started getting back into training. And it was right around January, that following January, where I got COVID. And a couple weeks later, I was just feeling real crappy just all the time. And so instead of waiting for a year, I went to the VA, got some labs done, and my glucose was in like the 450s. So they were like, come back tomorrow when you're fasted, we'll check it back out. And it was still super high. So immediately, boom, insulin dependent diabetic. Like just stack that on top of the Addisons. And which is cool when you like I follow some diabetic people and they do great things, but it's tough because I've got like this disconnect between the Addisons and the type 1
oh my
diabetic that
goodness.
regular diabetics don't deal with. And we're really, really, really rare. Addison's like one, I can't remember. It's a super rare disease. So to have both of them is even more rare. So there's not a lot of research, not a lot of literature, not a lot of, a lot of it's like case studies and
And
stuff
you said
like
you're
that.
type one?
And type 1, yeah. And and that's
Again,
come with its own set of
I'm
challenges.
curious, again, just ignorant to it. It seems like you've lived a relatively, at least maybe the last 5 or 10 years of your life, or whenever you're like getting into fitness, and yeah, you've had ups and downs with kids or school, whatever, but generally, for the last maybe 5 to 10 years, maybe, pushing yourself on a regular basis physically. I'm sure your diet varies a little bit, but probably not extraordinarily dramatically. What is it now that you think it took this long to figure out something on the diabetic side of the house? Like what took to this point in your life for it to actually rear its ugly head to the point that you had to go in and check out what was going on?
Yeah, so what they're saying, my endocrinologist said is COVID. COVID is causing in individuals with autoimmune disease, especially glandular diseases like I have, your adrenal cortex is a gland, right? Your pancreas gland. So people with glandular diseases getting COVID and it's just wreaking havoc and other things are starting to pop
Interesting.
up. Yep, and it was about a month, 3 weeks after that I was just like I like my couldn't like make a fist. My contractions were weird. I was sleeping
Really?
terrible. Like typical type 1 diabetic. Like I was peeing all the time, losing weight like crazy. And yeah. So yeah, it was like something ain't right. And yeah, thank
Ah,
God I went and got it checked out right away because I was able to get ahead of it. And I would say like the honeymoon phase, type 1 diabetics have a honeymoon phase where once you start treating it, it can get like almost like it's all better, right? Like once I started
hmm.
training again and I got my sugars in control, dude, I was like, again, like barely taking any insulin, barely like I was eating right, right? And that helps a lot. And I would say going back to the first diagnosis, like people with Addison's disease and type 1 diabetics, they can struggle greatly with fatigue, trying to get a program started, like body aches, pains, all sorts of that stuff. And I'm just positive that everything I did prior to that set me up for success. Like you said, good lifestyle habits. I had that requisite training in my body, like
Hmm.
I'm a big believer in like your body sets up satellite cells. So if you fall out of it, you can come back to it quicker because it's ready for that stimulus if you do it right, right?
Hmm.
But so yeah, it's just it was
So
it was
how
tough.
how you know diet and nutrition, I'm sure, is, like you said, critically important to not only how you feel, but your quality of life, literally.
100%.
How would you describe how you eat these days? Because maybe there's somebody listening to this who's diabetic as well and, works out and is struggling with some stuff. So what does it look like for you?
Yeah, so I really tried to maximize my carbs around my workouts. It's crazy. It's just basic good eating habits. the same thing I tell everybody else, how you should eat if you want to lose weight or control your weight. But I just time my carbs around my workouts a little bit more. Because at night I try not to eat as many carbs so I don't spike overnight. And that's been a big issue for me is spiking overnight. So I try to just get most of my carbs before I train because then I don't have to take as much insulin if I'm jumping right into a training session not too long after. Because when I train, my insulin or my blood sugar goes down. Like for diabetics, I've been told I might be getting this backed up, but more aerobic, your blood sugar just like slowly, gradually goes down for a regular diabetic. More interval, like high intensity training, you might actually see your levels increase over a training session. I just crash. And I think that might be the connection with the Addison's disease, where I don't get that cortisol release naturally, which is going
Oh,
to increase my blood sugar by, turning fats, like breaking down fats, getting them in the bloodstream, stuff like that. So it's really important to me that I time my carbs and what I eat and how much insulin I take because, dude, starting out, I would start a warm up and crash. And there's
mm,
nothing more psychologically defeating than like being ready to go work out and then having to stop, eat
right,
something,
right.
give it time, and then restart again. Like that is just the toughest thing on earth. So that was probably the biggest hurdle was like, how do I make it so I can get through a training session? And I would say that's kind of jumping to another program was a beneficial thing for me. I don't want to gloss it over, but like between being diagnosed with a diabetic and now, like my mom got cancer and died. My dad bought a plane, crashed a plane, got his leg amputated. Like he lives in Indiana now, remarried. Like it's just been this crazy roller coaster of a couple of years, all while trying to like learn to live as a diabetic and all that stuff. So I did a more hypertrophy focused with a little more like finisher type workouts just because like with all that stuff going on wasn't the most
Mm-hmm.
consistent. My blood sugars were kind of all over the place because as a diabetic, like dude, muscle mass, lean mass is a kind of a key to freedom. The more you
Mm,
have, like, the easier your life is, more responsive to insulin you are, all of that stuff. So I really just kind of needed something that was gonna take the intensity down a little bit so I could kind of learn how to control my sugars because
mm-hmm.
it was like anything over 5 minutes and my phone's squawking at me, right? And whether
Mm,
it was a true low or not, like I have to stop. I have to see if
right.
it's right. So yeah, I did another program for about a year and I put on some weight and I was able to really get my sugars under control and got some lifts back up to where I'm feeling confident. And yeah, I've been back on Linchpin for like 4 months now and just crazy, awesome, feeling great, loving it again. And yeah,
Well,
so
we're certainly happy to have you back, but man, I mean, you've had some stuff going on, my friend. I mean,
yeah,
like you said,
dude, it's
no reason to
pretty crazy.
don't underplay. Like all those things matter. Like any one of those things by themselves is significant. All of them in the course of a relatively short period of time, that's a big ask. On on the diabetic side of the house, for people unfamiliar with diabetes and different decisions that you either do or don't have to make, how much do you feel it influences regular life things, for lack of a better way to say it, that people without diabetes don't even have to think about for a second? Like, hey, Joe, the game's over. We're all gonna get pizza and nachos. Come on over. And you're like, I can't really do that, or I can do that, but then I have to offset it with something else and play this weird game. Like, what's that like?
100%. No, well, you live, so I have a continuous glucose monitor that I wear on me all the time, and you live with your phone or your monitor, and you're always aware of where your sugars are at. That's like number one thing. Anytime I'm going to do anything, where are my sugars? Because if it's anything physical, if I'm anywhere low, I need to eat something. You know what I mean? If they're running high and I know I'm going to be sitting on my butt for a while, then I need to take some insulin. If they're running high and I've got a half hour, I'm gonna go hop on my Echo bike and pound out at 10 minutes and try and get it down that way. Um, and just everywhere I go, I need to have a canister of insulin. I've got a canister that keeps it cold because if your insulin gets too hot, then it degrades, no good. And
Huh.
that's another big thing, like just I've got a kit, man. I've got a kit with my insulin, with another liquid hydrocortisone shot that I've never had to use, but in like case of emergencies, and I all my coworkers are aware of like if I'm acting this way, I need
Right.
this. If I'm
Right.
acting this way, I need that. If I'm passed out in the middle of the gym, do this. Everybody's everybody's kind of wise. And like it sucks because my daughter is deathly afraid of needles, but now we've got to draw her blood every 6 months to make sure she's not showing signs of
I
it.
didn't
So
realize that.
absolutely, very, very genetic. My
Oh,
grandma was a type 1 diabetic on my mom's side. So very,
okay.
very genetic, and it sucks because yeah, I hate having to put her through that, but I mean we got to do it. But no, I
Interesting.
saw a stat. I don't know if this is all any true, but it rang true to me. Was type 1 diabetics have to make on average like 150 more decisions a day than a normal person. And I feel like that's totally true.
Wow. I believe it.
Maybe not to that extent, but yeah, it's just something you're always thinking about, especially if you're fit, especially if you want to do stuff, especially if you want to go out there. And like, dude, I'll never be able to drink a milkshake, like a whole milkshake. I'll never be able to eat a crumble cookie. Like, I can have bits, I can have pieces. Dosage is everything, as with everything, right? But I can't just house it. Otherwise, I will pay for that for weeks. And I'm not of the mindset of like, just swallow a whole thing of insulin. I'll be fine. You know what I mean? I'd rather, like, for me, I'm competitive. It's a game. I'm supposed to keep my sugars between 80 and 180. And whenever it's out, I'm losing my mind. I'm a little irritated. What's going on? What do I got to do to get it back? So the couple times where I have, like, dude, one time my wife is great about it, but one time she just got this hair up her butt that was like, I'm gonna make homemade chocolate chip cookies. And I like a wild animal, just like lost
Yeah,
all my
that smell
senses.
was in the house.
And dude, I paid for that for 2 weeks to get my levels back normal, and it wasn't worth it. So, well, I have gone crazy. And like, dude, partying, forget about it. Like, it's so much harder to recover if you want to like go and have a couple drinks and stuff. And diabetic friendly alcoholic drinks basically don't exist outside of
Mm,
light beer. So if you want to have a drink like see you later IPAs or anything like that,
right.
I'm basically confined to like Coors Light, where I'm not a huge drinker, but you go out to like breweries and places like that, not everyone even has a diabetic friendly beer on their menu. So it's
Right.
a lot of time just all right, in water.
I would
But
tend to
that's,
think,
very small piece I'm
I
worried
would
about.
tend to think, and I have no basis for this other than just thinking out loud, that people who are diabetic, it would obviously be treat them so well if they were so intently and acutely aware of health and fitness and strength and conditioning and nutrition and all that as well. I feel like sadly, from some of like the people in my relative group that have developed like type 2 diabetes later in life, they just don't really change much, even if they know that they should, and they just regulate it with how much insulin that they're taking. I mean, I've never heard of you're a very special diabetic when you say, well, I can either take some insulin or ride 30 minutes on the Echo bike. You might be the only diabetic that's ever mentioned like the Echo bike as a way to not take the insulin. But like if more people got that and maybe made the Echo bike choice, I mean, that's fantastic, man. So again,
Really hard, dude.
my hat's
Yeah,
off to you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I
I
don't
think
like the Echo bike, trust me.
no, no,
I
no.
just hate high blood sugar more. It's just
That would be such a great, like, sure, for diabetics. I hate the Echo bike, but I hate high blood sugar more. Um, man, from your time, the military side of the house, the CrossFit coaching side of the house, the checking out various programmings, the autoimmune disease, the the diabetic side of the house, the going back to school, the raising the kids, the whole nine yards, man. You're doing it, my friend. I'm sure sometimes you feel like you're drowning, but you're doing it, and you are like I say all the time, Linchpin's full of like real people with real lives, like real lives that
100%.
don't have just free time falling out of their butt, and they still somehow gotta either choose to be fit or choose not to be fit. Like, and you're making that choice, and I'm sure it is difficult. So, Joe, I just want to say thanks, brother. Thanks for being a part of Linchpin, and thanks for sharing your story.
Hey, no problem. And thank you. Hey, you're a big inspiration. You post regular life, and a lot of the time, nobody cares. Work harder. Just get to it, you know? So,
100%. 100%. Well, man, again, thanks, brother, and I guess I will see you online.
all right.
Enjoy the skiing this year.
Hey, I will.